recording this so that we can share this with people who were not able to attend this evening. This is a two-part session. This is the first part, I won't say beginner part because maybe there are people here that are pros but came to learn a new tip or two. But this is sort of the before you actually start editing, the thought that goes into preparing your video, and of course then starting to actually record that video. So let's go ahead and dive in. I will also recognize in the chat a couple more movies, Jurassic Park, and well, Golden Girls isn't a movie, but it's definitely worth watching. So we'll put that out there. All right, so we've already finished this part. Just a quick reminder about Zoom etiquette. This is a pretty small group, so there will be times where we'll pause and let you come off mute and ask questions. You can also just put your questions directly into the chat. And Jenny is my assistant this evening. She will be keeping an eye on the chat so that as things come up, I won't miss those and we'll answer those as quickly as possible. All right, we've got another interactive option for you, and I'm going to put a poll onto the screen now. It's a 2-question poll, so you may need to scroll to see both questions. The first question is, what is your experience with recording videos on your smartphone? Just simply recording. And then the second question is kind of selfish on my part. I'm just curious, what kind of smartphone do you use? There's so many different brands out there now and different operating systems, and I'm always fascinated to see what those trends are. And secretly, this is going to help inform me as I prepare for next week's part 2 session, which is all about editing and using apps on your phone. So I think just about everyone has responded. I will give you maybe another second to wrap up. All righty. And this is where we are. Hopefully you can see these results. So we are a mixed bag as it relates to video recording. Some of us do it frequently, some of us do it occasionally, some of us have done it at some point in our lives, and some of us have never actually played with video on our smartphones. So this is great. I think that this, as I mentioned earlier, this class is skewed a bit more toward that beginner novice range, but I'm so glad the expert intermediates are here to learn something new. And by and large, it looks like we have a lot of Apple users in the house, which is great, but Android is certainly just as sophisticated as it relates to their camera capabilities and also their editing app. So thanks for indulging me on that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and keep trucking. So today, in the next 50 minutes or so, we're gonna go over these basic objectives. We're gonna explore first the types of videos that you can create on your own or create for your business, create for your Rotary Club. We're also going to examine and possibly practice some basic smartphone filming techniques. And spoiler alert, these are actually techniques that if you also have a DSLR camera or something else to record with, that you can apply to your regular camera as well. And then we'll also review some inexpensive equipment that if you're ready to take your video production to the next level, you can make a small investment and increase that overall quality. So let's start with the why. Any Simon Sinek fans out there? Start with why? Okay, never mind. So Rotary International has a strategic plan. And one of the strategic priorities is to expand our reach. And so you could argue that by using video to showcase the best of your club, you are achieving Rotary's objectives to build awareness of our impact and our brand, and also to increase Rotary's openness and appeal. It really helps create those opportunities for more people to be aware, get involved, and participate. And so when we look at our vision statement, you may be chuckling, yes, I know this is a stretch. But what I'm trying to reinforce here is if a photo speaks 1,000 words, a video could potentially convey 1,000,000. And so using video can showcase these Rotarians uniting and taking action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities and in ourselves. So I think you guys get that part. But why else is video a great tool for storytelling? Well, some of you might be data nerds, if you will. You like numbers. I know we have at least one financial guy on the call. Well, take a look at these numbers. These are fresh stats. And for 2021, approximately 85% of US adults go online daily. I wish, given that we have our international visitor in the room, I wish I had worldwide stats for you. Apologies that I don't. But I would argue that across the world, depending on the access to a device and internet capabilities, that these percentages are competitive in other countries as well. And in the United States, 81% of all consumer internet traffic was video. And quite simply, that's because people love video. Quick show of hands, how many of you are guilty of occasionally going on Facebook to see what your friends are up to, or maybe just escape from the world for a moment? And next thing you know, you find yourself watching puppy videos, or maybe people doing slapstick stuff and falling, right? We all are sucked in by video. And so that just further shows that visual content drives engagement. So let's, I'm going to pause real quick. Susan, were you raising your hand about videos, or do you have a question?
I was just raising my hand about the videos.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. I didn't want to skip over you. All right. So let's keep moving. So why should you utilize video? I'm sure you've already reached this conclusion, but let's just go over them briefly. First, we know that video can instantly transport an audience to a location. Your clubs probably do at least one international project, potentially more, but not all of your club members may be able to attend that project. And so by making sure that whoever is attending can film that video and bring it back to a club and share them, you can help transport your members to that location. If you share it online, then it helps you broaden your reach. You can reach a lot of people really quickly through the use of video. You can also humanize, personalize, localize Rotary. And this is what I love, is that we can show the people of action, the people behind the work, our diversity. And also, when I say localize, let's be honest, we have 48 clubs in District 5150. They are all completely different from each other. So we can showcase what's unique about the Rotary Club of Redwood City versus the Rotary Club of Novato versus the Rotary Club of San Francisco Chinatown. And finally, as we've already talked about, you can convey Rotary people of action. So now I want to move back to an interactive portion with all of you and have a quick discussion using the chat. What topics could Rotary cover in a video, or what kinds of videos could Rotary create? Go ahead and type your ideas into the chat briefly. Got some ideas coming in now. Looks like we've got club projects, membership stories, service projects, club socials, definitely some trends on service projects. Oh, sharing speaker talks on topics of white interest, why we give to the foundation, that's great. Movement where people are doing, not just waving at the camera. Gold star, Richard. Thank you for that contribution. What Rotary is all about, highlighting speakers. And yes, working in the occasional dog photo into that as well. People of action. Well, you guys are a natural at this. Some of these ideas, as we've already covered, service projects, socials, our meetings, event promotions, whether it be maybe an upcoming club fundraiser or a service project that's open to the whole community and not just your club. Hey, Rotary FAQs. Did you know this about Rotary, or did you know that? Or maybe in an instructional video for your members on how to update their profile in Club Runner. Member interviews or vocational moments. Maybe your club president would like to broadcast a monthly message to the membership, which is kind of neat right now with the pandemic still going on. It's an opportunity for your president to stay in touch with members. Frankly, you can create a video for Rotary on just about any topic you can dream up. So keep that in mind. And I guarantee you, if you took this challenge back to your club, they could probably assist you in thinking up even more ideas. So my next question is, we think about planning out a video. Where are some places that you can look for content? And with a little bit of time and thought, I'm sure you'll find that there are plenty of ideas right under your nose. So as we mentioned in the chat, many of you highlighted service projects, others are events. So look to your club calendar to start. If you have planned projects, those are natural opportunities for a video. And I know a couple of clubs on this very call have done that in the past, which is great. Kudos to you. Also, look to your members. How many of you have ever asked someone's opinion and then proceeded to hear a 5-minute response? People love sharing their opinion, sharing their perspective, sharing their why in terms of why they joined Rotary or why they give. So look to your members and ask them to provide some content. If all else fails, there's always the Rotary International monthly themes, which maybe don't apply to all clubs, especially smaller clubs that maybe only do local projects, but it's an opportunity to help your members learn more about the diversity and the wide reach that Rotary International has. Now, before you start filming, I recommend making a plan. This is a planning worksheet that I will email to you immediately after this session. I realize it's small, hard to read. We're going to go over this content on the next screen in larger font, but it can be tempting when you're in the moment to just whip out your cell phone or your smartphone and start filming. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. You can create a pretty darn good video on the fly, being there in the moment. However, sometimes you can take that video to the next level with a little bit of forethought. And here's what I mean by that. It's asking yourself, what's the story we're really trying to tell? And for example, that may be, what's the why behind this project? What's the cause? What's the problem that we're solving through this project? Thinking also through, what are some interesting images or scenes or angles that I can help film that will tell that story in a very interesting and unique way? And we're going to talk about those possible angles and scenes in a little bit, but it gives you an idea to think through, for example, if we're looking at a service project, how that might unfold and how you can add some additional life to this video versus just having one person talk on camera for a couple of minutes. That's effective. It gets the message across, but showing people the action is what really can pull on heartstrings. So for example, my club does a bike build. They build bicycles for young children of families who may not have the means to buy bicycles for their children to use for transportation or for play or whatever it may be. And so by unique images and angles that would help tell the story, in addition to having the club president give the overview of the why and how many bicycles and things like that, I might go and film someone with a wrench tightening up a bolt on the wheel really close, or show a few Rotarians laughing as they inadvertently put the handlebars on backwards. And yes, it always happens every year. Or the little kids smile on their faces, they're sitting in the bicycle for the first time, or the broad assembly of all of the bikes, hundreds of bikes in one location. You get the idea that the purpose is to help transport people to that location to tell the story. All right, moving on. Asking yourself also, will there be narrative? What we mean by this is what will that person that you're going to interview, if you're going to interview somebody, say? You're not necessarily going to script them, but this leads into my next bullet is, if there are key points you really want the audience to hear, try to plan those out and make sure whoever you're going to interview can try to cover those. Maybe it's, again, that why, maybe it's thanking key sponsors, maybe it's inviting people to come and participate in the next event, whatever it may be, having those mapped out in advance means you have a better chance of having a well-rounded video versus at the end when you're putting it all together, like, oh, I wish they had just said this. And then finally, who's the best person to do the talking? You know, is that your club president? Is it the person that put together the project? Or maybe it's a beneficiary receiving the great work that Rotary is doing, whatever that benefit is. So those are some of the questions that you'll ask yourself on that planning form. And as the district public image chair, I also feel it's my duty to say you should also look for opportunities for those branding moments, such as will they be in Rotarians at work or Rotarians volunteering t-shirts? Will there be Rotary wheels somewhere? So those are great things to think out. Okay, we're almost done on the planning part, and then we're going to get into the filming because I'm sure all of you are thinking, when are we getting to the good stuff? Finally, I want to remind you that you don't have to do this on your own. Some of you might be your club's public image chair, maybe you're not, but it shouldn't necessarily all fall on the public image chair's shoulders. You can lean on your service project chair, your membership chair, and frankly, there may be members in your club that aren't a chair of anything, but they would love to learn how to do this and experiment. So reach out to your club and see how they can contribute. Even if it's everyone go and collect footage, you know, everybody take their own recordings and then give it all to one person to then put together. Sometimes you can get some really cool footage, really good recordings from different people because everyone has their own perspective. So take that to heart. All right, so let's have a quick conversation about equipment. Equipment is pretty basic. Now, first and foremost, the number one and only thing you need to get started is a video-enabled smartphone. So if you have an iPhone, if you have your Android, you're fine. That's the basic thing you absolutely need. However, if you'd like to take your production to the next level, then you can certainly add a lavalier mic or some other type of microphone and a tripod with a phone adapter. So I am going to try to be tricky real quick. Switch devices. Let's see if this works. So that I can show you all. Excuse me if you get seasick. All right, so here is a simple lavalier microphone that I use. I got it off Amazon for, I'm not kidding, maybe $15. There's lots of different types out there, but this is the type where the microphone attaches to a person's lapel or maybe the top of their shirt. It is wired, but I'll be honest, this thing has great sound quality. I have a long cord. This is about 10 feet. So when I hook it into my phone, I don't need to be really close to the person that I am recording. It gives me some breathing room to get away, step away from them, especially if I want to record at a certain angle. Now you can buy these microphones on Amazon pretty inexpensively. I can also include some links to possible options for you to buy. They're around $20. I will say though, most lavalier microphones and most microphones in general come with the traditional jack like you would see on headphones, which if you have an older iPhone, something before the iPhone 8, which this is an iPhone 6, you have your headphone jack. So that's not a problem. Androids, it also depends on the model. If you have a newer smartphone, however, so like an iPhone 8 or later, iPhone 8, as you know, got rid of the the jack, headphone jack that is. And so you'll need an adapter of some sort. This particular adapter, you can see that the headphone jack plugs into there. And then this part of the adapter would plug into my smartphone. But then it keeps this inexpensive but effective microphone able to work with my phone just fine. The other thing that you can do is there are wireless microphone options. They're more expensive. So if you're new to video, you're not really sure if this is for you, you may not want to make this investment. This is a Rode wireless microphone. So one of these is sort of the transmitter that stays connected to the phone and the other connects to the person that wants to wear the microphone. There's also adapters where you can plug in a mic. So you have the lavalier setting, and can be clipped to a pocket. This is really nice, like I mentioned, because it's wireless. So someone could be much further away from the camera than the 10 feet, the foot cord that I have here. Or you can use it as a handheld microphone situation. So if any of you participated in Up and Away with E-Ray, we did a roving reporter, and it was these little mics that we used to make that happen. So one thing on microphones, you may think this is over the top, but I will say people will forgive not so great video, but people will not forgive bad audio. So you probably may recognize this yourself if you're listening to video and someone is really faint over in the background and you're struggling to hear, or there's just a lot of wind interference. People will give up and they'll stop watching the video. But if the sound is good and the video is so-so, so you can make out what's going on, they'll hang on and go with the video. So keep that in mind as you look at it. Now, the other thing that we wanted to talk about was a tripod. I've got my little handy dandy tripod over here in the corner. This is something that honestly I bought at Target, I think for 30 bucks, 15 years ago. So if you take care of them, you'll have them forever. You don't need to spend a lot. There's a lot of fancy, all aluminum, whatever tripods out there for $200. But frankly, just get a basic that's sturdy. This one collapses down so that you can, I throw it into a small bag, throw it in my car trunk, and I'm off and away. One thing you will need, though, is an adapter to hold your smartphone, because most tripods do not come with an adapter for your smartphone. They just are meant for traditional cameras. So this is an example of an adapter. I think most of you have seen these now in the Zoom era. This expands so that I can slip my iPhone into that either horizontally, or I can turn this bracket so that I can put my phone into it vertically. So that is a quick preview of how that all works. And I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. So again, those are some basic, inexpensive opportunities for you to up your game. Now on the tripod, why would you want to use a tripod? For the most part, you won't. When I do video, I'm usually handheld and trying to follow the action. However, if you're doing a longer interview, you can do your very best to hold your arms still, but there's just something about the human body. Those arms will get tired and your video will get shaky. And so by having it on a tripod, it will stay very still, and that's less of a distraction to your viewers. So keep that in mind. But again, if you're going after the action shots, you're getting into that wrench shot, like I mentioned earlier, you won't need a tripod for that. Now there's also, I want to acknowledge, there's a lot of other fancy equipment out there that and these are things like extra lights and gimbals, which is a cool thing to stabilize your phone when you're on the go. Those are great. But for now, I would stay in this lane. This is a great place to be, and for starting out with recording videos and having fun creating things for Rotary. All right, so now we're going to get into filming techniques. First things first, I always like to tell people, if you're going to get a lot of mileage out of the footage that you are recording, I highly recommend you film it horizontally. If you think about television, if you think about YouTube, most of that footage is filmed horizontally. There are exceptions to the rule, especially as TikTok and Instagram or Facebook stories become more popular. They're sort of pushing this vertical generation. And if you're making something especially for that purpose, then great, you can go for a vertical video. But by and large, horizontal is the way to go, especially if you want to go back and use it again for another project, maybe a formal video for your fundraising dinner. You're going to want to have that look as professional as possible, and horizontal is the way to go. And if that's hard to remember, I have this great picture that just really drives it home. if you were meant to watch vertical video, your eyes would be placed on your face differently. So just don't do it. All right, so now we're going to cover interviews, and there's two different ways to film, to set up an interview or to set up somebody being on camera. And when you think about this, and I'm going to challenge you to go home and watch TV or watch, if you have your favorite online internet news show, whatever it may be, you'll probably notice this. Your news anchors are going to be talking to you directly at the camera. Generally, they are centered unless they have that little informational box off to their right or their left. But when you watch news stories and the interviewee is talking to someone else, they're rarely looking at the camera. They're usually looking slightly off camera and they're off center. And there was a study done, and I'm forgetting the university that did this study, so you have to forgive me, but they actually showed that there was something psychological about when somebody is talking to you, when somebody is sharing their story and talking about something that doesn't necessarily pertain to you, but they're, you know that they're addressing another person, it was weird for them to be looking into the camera and saying it versus, looking off camera. I think it's kind of crazy because I know we've seen a lot of testimonials, especially in the social media age, where people are looking into the camera. But anyway, it created this artsy form of what's known as short and long side composition. So in sum, when you set somebody up for one of these professional looking interviews, you are actually going to set them up off center. You're going to place the person, as you'll see, kind of on one half of the screen. And then they will be looking across the camera, across that long side to the opposite side of the screen. So let me show you another illustration of this. So here we have a wonderful Rotarian. And Rich, I see you. I'll be back in just a second with that question. So here I have a lovely Rotarian. She's going to be talking to somebody off screen. So they've set her up on the left-hand side, or at least your left. And they've also incorporated what's known as the rule of thirds. Now, show of hands, you can just raise your hand. How many of you are familiar with the photography aspect of rule of thirds? Okay, if not, that's fine. This is another sort of study that pictures, paintings, when the elements, the composition before you are set up in kind of thirds. So you can see the woman's eyes are in that intersection of the upper left and the right, the left third. It's not fun for somebody who's dyslexic. Your eyes are naturally going there. It's just, there's something about it that's pleasing to the eye. So you'll also notice in photographs, if there's a mountain scene, sometimes they are centered, but more often than not, they're off center, and they might be in that upper third or the lower third. And they try to sort of compose the picture with all the key things that stand out in that photo or painting in that way. So you're borrowing from the same thing. So you're going to try to set the person up, again, that off-centered, one half or the other. If you can aim for that middle third, great, but don't stress. If you don't nail it, it's not a big deal. So again, they're looking across the camera. And here is one more example of this in place. So they're off center, as you can see in the camera lens or the camera viewfinder down below. Sorry for the graininess on this photo. They are now looking across the camera at the person doing the interview. So that's just a quick example of one way to set up your interview. It's, if you don't remember, it's not the end of the world, but again, these are tips to take your framing up to the next level. There's one thing I do want to go back to as well, is to give your subject a little bit of breathing room. So don't zoom in on their face if possible, but maybe frame them from mid-chest on up so that there's some interest there and it doesn't feel as uncomfortable, like they're right in your face, right in the camera lens. So there's that aspect of it. Now, that rule of thirds, there's a cheater function that you can use. This is built into all iPhones, and I believe Androids as well. What you see on the screen right now is the iPhone setting. So if you go into your settings, scroll down to camera, You should be able to open that up, and then you'll see an option for grid. And if you simply press that little switch button there off to the right, that will turn on the grid on your camera. And you may have noticed that when I was sharing my camera screen earlier, you may have saw that tic-tac-toe looking thing. That's what that was, is the grid. All right. So now there's that centered stance that I told you about. And this can be for interviews as well, but it's more often than not used for statements. And this is very simply when somebody is, oops, I'm scrolling ahead, sorry about that. When somebody is standing centered in the camera, looking right into the camera lens and delivering their message. So let's see if this works. This is an example that I filmed actually a couple of years ago. I presented a similar session to the Rotary International Convention, the virtual convention in 2020. And so as part of my sample, this was a little promo, but I just want to show you, this is an example of me doing a centered, semi-centered. I kind of didn't nail it, see, but it doesn't matter. Looking at the camera, delivering my message. And can you guys hear that? I'm sorry, I don't know if I shared my sound. Nope. All right, let me restart that.
No sound.
Use the power of video to connect with both current and potential members and supporters? Video is an easy and effective way to tell your story and illustrate Rotary People of Action in action. With today's technology, you can create effective videos using only a smartphone. Join me on July 25th at 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time for Lights Smartphone Action, telling your Rotary story on the go. In about 60 minutes, you will...
Okay, that's enough. I don't like to hear myself, but you get the idea. So it's very simple to simply turn that camera around. There's the mirrored mode that we often use when we take selfies. It works the very same way. So if you want to be able to deliver a video and see that you are framed up, that is a way to do it. Now, if you're watching that and telling yourself, there's no way I can remember all I want to say and say it as polished as what I just heard. Well, I'm going to have a true confession with you all right now. I cheated. I actually used a teleprompter. And this is why I love smartphones, is yes, they make an app for that. And so this is, I'm going to play a clip of this. This is the same video. There's not sound on this version, so don't panic when you don't hear what I'm saying, but it's the exact same recording, only this time you're seeing my screen and what I was looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And what's cool about these apps now is they will listen to you. So as I'm actually reading the script, it is continuing to move with the pace of my recording. Now, you may recall at one point, after I talk about the subject of this video, I pause, and I did that on purpose to further illustrate how the teleprompter app works. So this is a little cheater move that I'm happy to share with you. If you want to create, especially those real quick, think of like a public service announcement, they're only 30 seconds, sometimes 60 seconds. If you want to keep it short and you know exactly what you want to say, you can download one of these teleprompter apps and plug in your scripts, simply email it to yourself and then copy from your email, paste it into the app. And this is a way that you can accomplish that. These teleprompter apps, there are free versions. The one that listens to you and moves with your pace is not free, unfortunately. It does cost a few dollars, but honestly, it's a great investment. I have used the teleprompter app. Previous governors have had their monthly videos on this. I've used it a ton for work. So to me, it's a great app to use and it's very versatile. So now I want to move away from just that interview aspect. And the reason I covered interview first is I like my style, and you'll all find your own style. My style is to create more of a narrative, almost like a news piece type video. I work in the communications industry. I sometimes daydream that I should have gone into the news industry, so maybe that's why I do it. But by news style interview, you often hear that voice telling you the story, but you don't always see the person, but that person, that voice is walking you through what's happening. So that's why I like to focus on the interviews first. And then what's beautiful about those news style interviews is the visuals bring what's being said to life. And so this is why I always really encourage people to consider recording visuals to accompany the narrative. I think I said earlier, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having someone recorded on camera for 2 minutes telling you what's going on. But for those statisticians out there, here's another fun fact. The average human attention span is actually less than that of a goldfish. And by incorporating visuals into your film, you keep it visually, you keep it mentally stimulating and interesting. So listening to that same soundbite, that same narrative for 2 minutes will seem less boring over time because you have this extra visual to tell the story. These visuals are often called in the media industry B-roll. This is kind of an editing term. I know I'm getting into the weeds, but if you hear me say B-roll, what it is in the editing bay, and we're going to see this next Thursday. There's kind of your main narrative, your main video content, if you will, and think of it like layers, like a sandwich, if you will. That's your base layer. And then all the fancy visuals and effects that you layer on top of that usually is the B layer. So that's where that comes from. A is your primary narrative. B is all the extra fun stuff. So these are your cutaway shots. So I think I've covered it creates the interest. When you go to film your visuals, you want to try to film stable shots. Don't be too shaky. Don't be chasing people unless you have the fancy equipment. And you want to record for at least 7 to 10 seconds. That's going to seem like a lifetime in the moment. A lot of us are used to just grab it and move on, grab it, move on. But the reason for this is it gives you more flexibility when it's time to edit, because that first second and a half might be a little shaky, as is the last part when you go to stop the recording. So if you take a 7 to 10 second long clip, you're likely to have really good content in that 5-second range in the middle. And often when we start to create videos, you may get so excited to want to get a lot of variety that you're just running around and you're hitting record aimlessly. Try to stop and look and see what's going on. Find something that's really cool. Set yourself up, look into that viewfinder, if you will, find a really neat angle and then hit record. It's a lot easier to have a few less video recordings of quality content than have a ton of just random shots that you can't really use. So that's just a tip on that front. Oh gosh, sorry, I forgot to hit the bullets. So now I want to share with you an example that I made. I guess this was a year and a half ago now. This was during the start of the pandemic. So no, I don't normally dress like a bandit with a bandana over my face. And yes, this was before they told us to stop wearing bandanas. So please don't hate on me. This was something that I actually did for work through the Marin County Fair. So I want you to keep an eye on that narrative and keep an eye on cutaways as well as diversity of shots. And again, this was filmed and edited entirely on a smartphone in about 30 minutes and published online.
Hi, I'm Lainey, and this is a special edition of the Marin Fair Minute. We're here at the Marin County Fairgrounds with a special feature, our drive-through fair food event, happening this weekend and next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you'll be able to get a number of your favorite fair foods, such as the giant corn dog, cotton candy, kettle corn, 3 flavors of funnel cakes, strawberry lemonade, and even some healthy fair food favorites as well. Here's how it works. Customers line up in their cars and will be directed through the parking lot where they'll be greeted by an employee who will take their order and collect payment. Orders will then be brought to the car window for customers to drive away and safely consume their tasty fair food at home. Customers customers remain in their vehicle for the duration of the drive-through fair food experience. While we were unable to assemble together in a traditional format, the Marin County Fair wanted to bring a little joy and some tasty treats to our favorite Marin fairgoers, and so we hope that you'll join us either this weekend or next weekend from 11 to 8 for our drive-through fair food event. Hope to see you there.
The stuff they talked me into at work. So yes, it was corny. It was corny, corn doggy. But it was a fun promo that they wanted to do for social media. And so I think I said a half an hour earlier. It may have been closer to an hour, but it was a quick, I used my tripod there, put my camera out as the cars were coming through that drive-through experience, said my script. I don't think I had a teleprompter there, so it took me a couple of goes. And then just made my way around and tried to find interesting shots. And then did some editing, which we'll cover next week. And it was online and engaging people to come down and check out the fair food. So that's an example of a way we've used this technology to promote an event. And so hopefully that gets your wheels turning about how you could do that as well.
Hi.
Hi. All right. So let's talk a little bit. Oh, did I just go backwards? All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So in the film industry, there's a term known as wide, medium, and close. And I want you to keep this in mind as we look at your capturing of different visuals. As you can see here, there's everything from that extreme wide shot. So I mentioned my earlier example of my club's bike build. They do hundreds, well, not hundreds, but easily over 100 bikes most times. And so an extreme wide shot might be going to the furthest end of the property and filming that whole mass of bikes once they are done being assembled, or if there's a big crowd or whatever it may be, or a big landscape shot like this. Then there's that wide shot. You're starting to come in a bit closer, and if you're looking at humans in your shot, it's basically the entire body is in your shot. Then of course there's that medium, close, and well, extremely close up. I don't like to use extremely close up on humans, but they are fun to do, like if hands are assembling something, again, thinking of service projects, or there's interesting items around. So you get the idea. By including a variety of different shots, not only of different objects and people, but of different angles and this wide, medium, and close, you create that visual interest and you add a little element of pizzazz to your storytelling. So keep this also in mind as you're capturing your stuff. You'll find that videos that just are continually filmed from that wide shot, again, they start to become repetitive. So this helps add that visual variety to what you're creating. A few more things on recording. So you're going to want to consider, I say iPhone here, I'm sorry, your smartphone's built-in features. Every smartphone's a little bit different, but for example, the iPhone does have a time-lapse feature, which is really cool. If maybe your club is painting the outside of a Boys and Girls Club, you can set your phone back and put it on time-lapse and potentially see it all transform in a short amount of time. There's also slow-mo, which is self-explanatory. These are really cool and can add some interest to your film. I just encourage you to use them selectively. Again, if you have time-lapse after time-lapse after time-lapse in the same video, it creates some redundancy. So use them, but use them selectively. Also, there is a feature known as exposure lock to maintain focus on your subject. I don't know if I can demonstrate it on my phone, but for most phones, if you simply tap on the screen where, say, that person's face is, it cues your smartphone to focus in on that and retain focus on that. And that's really helpful when, say, you're filming on a sidewalk. So for example, I know one of the clubs on this call recently did a security alarm giveaway for older adults, and it was outdoors. There was an interview on the sidewalk. And so, for example, by locking on that subject's face, anybody else walking behind that person would not distract the focus of the camera. So again, that's just like a simple tap, and usually you know it's working when it shows like a little box around that person's face. And then finally, and this is such an important thing, don't use digital Zoom if you can. Zoom with your body. What do I mean by that? When you use digital Zoom, and often that's pinching on an iPhone or an Android to just use the built-in Zoom to see something really far away, it actually diminishes the quality of the video you're recording. So you may notice when you take a picture, it's really like you can see what it is that you've zoomed in on, but it's really sort of grainy. If you can get up and walk closer to that subject, do it. I recognize that there will be situations where you can't, and yes, you can use digital Zoom, but by and large, if you can use your body, meaning walk on over there and get closer to it, do it, because you'll retain a higher quality video for whatever you record. We've already talked about audio matters, so if you can, use a microphone. If you can't, have your subjects speak up. I don't think anybody's ever talked too loud on a recording without a microphone, so just speak up. Take advantage of natural light where you can. Cameras on smartphones, especially the newest models, are really forgiving indoors, but sometimes things just look nicer when they're filmed outdoors or filmed near a window, so take that into consideration. And then finally, oh my gosh, this is one of the most important rules, so take note. Pencils, switch to airplane mode. Because inevitably you will be recording the most magnificent interview, and your subject will be in the middle of the most eloquent soundbite, and mom will call. And when that happens, it will stop your video on most phones. So airplane mode can be your friend if you're filming a very important video. So keep that in mind. All right, so we've covered a lot of content. We've gone over talking with your Rotary Club to think of video opportunities for your club. We have also gone through the planning form, which I'll be emailing to you immediately after this call ends. We've talked about the why you should be doing videos, and I think all of you know that because you're here. Basic equipment, how to film interviews, both offset and straight on, the secret tip about teleprompters, and some tips on recording visuals and cutaway shots. So I'm going to pause here. We're almost to our hour. I want to see what questions that you have. I did see a hand earlier, but it disappeared on me. So I'll also check the chat to see. All right, so any questions? And I will say, so next week, we are meeting again at 6 o'clock. What we will be covering next week is editing. So we'll be looking at, since the majority of participants have an iPhone, I'm tempted to use iMovie, but there's also other apps that go both ways. So we'll see how this works. But we're actually going to take a sample interview that I collected earlier, and we're going to talk about cutting those things. So if we want to cut out your own voice, or you didn't like what that person had to say, so we're cutting little things, stitching video together, keeping that narrative that I talked about, but also putting those cutaway videos over it so that you're hearing your interviewee, but you're seeing cool visuals. So we're going to go over all that, talk a little bit about using music and other features, and then most importantly, what to do with your video when you're done with it. So that's next week. Okay, so I've got a question in the chat. What teleprompter do I use? The app that I use is called Prompt Smart. It is the Pro edition, so I think I did pay, well, I'll say a pretty penny in the world of apps, meaning this I think was $15 to $20. Most apps, you know, are maybe a couple of dollars. But for me, in my line of work, it was worth it. I use this all the time. So Prompt Smart is the name. For our international friends, I will also say they are starting to come out with teleprompters that listen for other languages. So for example, I have the Prompt Smart Espanol edition because I sometimes assist with filming Spanish videos. So that might be helpful to you as well. Other questions that you may have. concerns, aspirations, video ideas?
Lainey, there's a question. It came in to me. What are the rules regarding non-Rotarian images, for examples, the children receiving bikes?
Oh, great question. Okay. Rich, was that your question? Just kidding. All right. So this is really good. So there's a few things about that. Children are a very sensitive subject. And so if possible, see if you can obtain a photo release from that parent or guardian, if possible. Sometimes that's impossible in advance. So a way around that, although I really highly recommend getting that signed photo release, is if the parent is there with the child, having the parent go on the recording prior to the child talking, or you recording the child and saying, you know, will you allow Rotary to record your child and use his or her likeness in a video about this event, right? But that's tricky because if you don't set it up for how you're going to use the video, they could find Rotary liable. That's why those photo release forms are so detailed with all that legal language. They basically cover everything possible. Now with adults, it's, you know, a little bit more flexible. So same sort of thing though, if they're non-Rotarians, really try to have those photo releases available. The other thing that you could do, especially if you're in an outdoor and kind of feels like more of a public space, you could have signage that says there will be filming taking place here by entering you consent and that sort of thing. But if you are unable to obtain that permission, a way to work around that is to just not capture faces. So for children, we might film the child interacting with the Rotarian. So we're filming from behind the child's head. We can see the Rotarian face. You can make out that it is a child, but there's nothing identifiable about that child. You do have to be careful if the child does have something that is extremely unique and could be identifiable. So, for example, a really unique hairstyle, or maybe it's a teen and this teen has piercings, or maybe they already have a tattoo on their neck, or often these teens, you know, like buzz cut things in the side of their heads. I don't know, those type of things, you know, that could be considered identifiable. So use your best judgment, and when possible, you know, find ways to film that leave that individual as not identifiable. So obviously that means no faces. So hopefully that helps, Rich. And I'd be happy to talk with you offline with more ideas. And, you know, Judy Wilson brings up a great point in the chat. You know, our district and several clubs in our district do a dictionary project with local schools, and the schools will often help you by getting those either negative release forms or getting your own Rotary release forms signed in advance. Schools will know, because part of attending a school, they often have these blanket photo releases at the start of school year. So they will know if there's any children in a classroom that absolutely cannot be filmed, because you think about some children might be in foster care, or they might be in some sort of protective services program where they absolutely cannot be filmed. And that school will let you know, great, but leave these other ones out, right? So thanks for bringing that up, Judy. Other questions as we wrap up our day? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all your lovely faces.
Lonnie, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Was this email this was an outstanding session. And I hate to feel that or think that I almost missed it, because I was reading email this afternoon and saw from Danielle, I saw the email and said, oh, cool. So I signed up at, who knows, 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock. Did I miss earlier emails or what?
This was a later edition. It was announced in the district's monthly newsletter. That's the email that usually has the video from Governor Danielle. So when you receive those monthly newsletters, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see a list of upcoming events. It's usually over the next month and a half. So it was in there, but I think it was added what was that? Either late January, Danielle, or the beginning of this month. So it was a late edition. Normally we like to give a bit more notice. So apologies for that, but thank you for reading the email today.
Oh, yes.
I'm glad you're
Yeah.
here.
And I guess I'm exposed that I must not read the monthly emails as often as I should. So
And now you have something to look forward to when you receive.
I promise going forward, I'll read them. Thank
It's
you.
okay. And for all of you that are here, so we are having this part 2 session next Tuesday. I'm going to drop the link into the chat. Maybe you've already signed up. I did take a peek about an hour before the session started, and there was only, I think, 2 people that had signed up for this session that were already signed up for next week. So it is a different Zoom link. So if you have a moment, go ahead and sign up, secure your spot for next week. And like I said, that's where we're going to talk more about hands-on editing with your phone and that sort of thing. All right, looking at the chats. Yes.
Can you please email us the link? Is it possible to email us the link of the next
Yes.
session?
When you registered for the session, you you input your email, correct? I think so. I will make sure that if you want to drop, Sharmila, if you want to drop your email in just to be sure, I know I have everyone else's email, and I will send that email out this evening. It will have not only the link to sign up for next week, but again, that video brainstorming worksheet that we had a preview of earlier. And I'm also sending you a PDF that has a few sample videos, rotary videos that were created entirely on a smartphone. So they were filmed on the smartphone, they were edited on the smartphone, pushed to YouTube or Facebook from the smartphone. It's an older list, so technology is actually even better now, but it's just to get your juices flowing. Between now and next Thursday, I would love to challenge you to either go back to your club and brainstorm, hey, what are a couple of videos that we could create in the next few months? Maybe you have a fundraiser coming up or a cool service project or whatever. And then if you're really feeling it, get that smartphone out, go out and just for fun, doesn't even have to be rotary, play with it. You know, record your cat, record your partner, interview your partner about their favorite movie or sports team or their first date with you, or record a Rotarian testimonial. But the idea is to start getting used to your camera on your smartphone and putting some of these lessons we learned tonight to use. And if you capture some of that footage, then next week when we do our editing, you might actually be able to start editing in real time. So that's that. If there aren't any other questions, then this session is officially done. So you are free to go. I'll stick around a few more minutes if you do have questions. Otherwise, I hope to see you all back this time next week as we do our part 2 and create a bunch of wonderful videographers and editors right before our eyes. All right. Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Lainey.